Hey everyone, we've just got a short lecture here on the presence or the role of social media in social work practice. Now, I will admit there's a ton of different ways to sort of think about how social media intersects with social work practice, but what we're going to be talking about sort of over the next couple of minutes here is at least the social media presence of the social worker themselves. We There are other ways to certainly sort of think about social media and social work, and that's the impact of social media on clients. We know that it can have both good effects and negative effects. We know that social media um, facilitates connections and things like that, and might become one of the avenues through which social workers are delivering services. Certainly, macro social workers, people who are interested in community organizing, policy work, and things like that, were among the first to adopt sort of social media as a means to facilitate organizing and things like this. But nevertheless, what we're going to be talking about here, at least for the next couple of minutes, is sort of the presence of the social workers or the social workers' presence on social media and some considerations for that. So first of all, what do we mean by social media? It seems kind of silly to have to even um, give a definition of social media since it's fairly ubiquitous right now. But there's a reason I'm doing so, and I'll get to it in just a second. So the sort of social work definition of social media is Web 2.0 technology that contains user-generated content, and the purpose of that content is to find, maintain, build relationships, social relationships. So Web 2.0 is this term that means simply that users are generating content. Web 2.0, among people who think about this kind of stuff, came after Web 1.0. And in Web 1.0, it was experts that were creating content for others to consume, or for users to consume. And then Web 2.0 kind of came along and pushed out experts and created a space for users and ostensibly non-experts to create their content. So one of the ways to sort of think about Web 1.0 and Web 2.0 is in the context of, say, news or something like that. So in a Web 1.0 paradigm, you had reporters, experts, that kind of thing, who were researching and writing stories and then publishing them to a specific website, usually a company website, and people would go on and read those news stories. In Web 2.0, people were able to, or in the Web 2.0 paradigm, people are able to publish their own stories on a site of their choosing that people can then publish. Well, so it may seem silly that people are publishing their own stories, but if you think about Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, anything that allows a person to publish even just a few lines or a few words of text, um, that's essentially sort of where the difference is. So users are often producing content that's much shorter in duration, maybe not professionally edited, cultivated, professionally developed, but it's still sort of generated by the user. So the reason that we had to sort of give a definition of social media is that it's impossible to predict sort of what the next social media site is going to be. So obviously, here in 2020, things like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Reddit. There's others that I'm just drawing a blank on. There's certainly others, but we all probably have memories of sort of defunct or social media companies that are sort of falling out of favor. Vine was a video sharing app that that had a pretty quick demise. Napster was a music sharing, didn't necessarily have a social component to it, but it was a music sharing service that sort of had a noteworthy decline. And then there's things like message boards and sites like the Chive MySpace and LinkedIn and Reddit and that all sort of fit under the definition of Web 2.0 social media, but are in various states of popularity decline, that kind of thing. So the point of me giving a definition here was just to make you aware that there's likely going to be other people, other companies who come into the social media space. And so we have to sort of apply the framework for thinking about social media to technologies and social media technologies that sort of haven't even been developed yet. And so with that said, there's very little I can give you in the way of sort of hard and fast guidelines. It's more just a way of thinking about these different things. So a couple of usage statistics real quick. The usage of social media varies widely. By the way, I was going to say, what I meant to say on this page too is that some dating sites also have sort of a social media component to them as well. So where the boundary of social media falls, the boundaries of social media aren't particularly clear, and they sort of continue to be blurred. Message boards, for example, are message boards considered social media? Well, if we think about the definition of Web 2.0 user-generated content, then in a sense they are, even though message boards sort of have a very different function than, say, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or something like that. So at any rate, usage, the estimates vary widely, but the most recent report that I could find suggests that about 70% of the population has at least one social media account. And then there's reports saying that 30 to 50% of the U.S. population has two or more accounts. Usage is much higher among young people, and then obviously different age groups favor different social media platforms and things like this. Suffice to say, I think the argument here is that social media is just about ubiquitous, and even if someone hasn't heard about even if someone doesn't have a social media account, it's entirely likely that they've at least heard of it. So as I said a second ago, there are really no hard and fast rules about social media. In fact, our ethics doesn't prohibit the use of social media. It doesn't sanction what goes on or can't go on social media, with the exception of information about clients. Obviously, that can't go on social media. And we also have a recent amendment to the Code of Ethics that demands sort of competence in technology, and that's both in the use of technology and sort of the thinking about technology. And social media is obviously a part of that. Social media clearly has good features. It facilitates networking and social connections. Organizers have used social media for good for a very, very long time. So there are a number of good things. And social media, I don't want to give the message in this talk that social media is sort of universally a bad thing. It's certainly not. But it does have the potential for problems. And so there's some issues about which social workers should really be aware. And these are things like boundaries, dual relationships, privacy settings. You may have content sort of, you may have your profile sort of locked down, but this idea of tagging can make some private content very accessible. Social media also has sort of implications for the dignity of the profession and professional integrity, and then of course privacy and confidentiality, the potential for dual relationships. So social workers are sort of still social workers even when they're on their own time. They're sort of off the clock and on their own time, and what we post even in our private lives has implications for our professional lives. So these are the recommendations that I can sort of give, and these are sort of based on what's in the literature right now, best practice guidelines, and so I'll give them to you, and then I'm going to give you a caveat sort of at the end. So the sort of the first recommendation is to sort of be aware of what you have, be aware of what you post and what you may have posted previous to starting an MSW program. Think about it from the perspective of clients. It doesn't mean you necessarily have to take it down. It just means you have to sort of think through it and maybe audit your feed if you need to. Audit your privacy settings. Take a look, especially as software is updated and user agreements are updated. Audit your feeds from time to time. Go back and look through old posts and consider deleting them, making them private, editing them, whatever it is you need to do. It's probably reasonable to assume that your clients will search for you too, especially if you're thinking about private practice. Obviously one of the ways that people are going to find you is through a simple Google search. But assume that even if you're not in private practice, that clients will search for you. And so it's a good idea to search for yourself from time to time and see what your web presence look like, and see what social media accounts pop up when you do search for yourself. And then understand that the guidelines are going to change and standards will change as NASW and other sort of professional organizations think through the use and utility of social media. So be on the lookout for guidelines to change in the future and maybe become more prescriptive or less prescriptive as things change. All right, I will end it there. Thank you for watching.